Welcome to Ripple Effects, Travelers with Disabilities Abroad, brought to you by the National Clearinghouse on Disability and Exchange, a project sponsored by the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs and administered by Mobility International USA. We know that international exchange can influence personal and professional development. It can enhance one's confidence and skill sets, broaden one's perspective, and shape one's educational path. It can also influence job choices and career opportunities. Let's find out how. For this season of Ripple Effects, we hear the stories of international exchange alumni with disabilities and how their programs relate to their careers. This is part of a new initiative from the Clearinghouse called #LifeAfterExchange. I'm Justin Harford, a project coordinator with Mobility International USA and your host for Ripple Effects. Spending a high school year abroad with Youth for Understanding in Germany taught Stacy Mayfield what it's like to struggle to find the right words. Now, 20 years and 4.5 languages later, she has dedicated her career to connecting with others through languages and enabling them to express themselves. Well, Stacy, I'm glad you could be with us here today, and we're just wanting to get your perspective now. You have an interesting career that's all kind of been about. You've had a lot of opportunities to communicate with interesting people, and it all started, I know, with your international exchange. I wonder if you could start by just kind of sharing that with us.
Sure. Well, first thing you should know is that I have cerebral palsy. I didn't really think that was a big deal until I learned that I was one of the first wheelchair users to sign up for an 11-month exchange with Youth for Understanding in, 1996.
Wow.
So over 20 years ago, when I was 16, I grew up and lived in a small town for most of my childhood and teenage years, and I was ready to get out and see the world, meet new people. My parents were really encouraging, and so with support from them, I left the small college town of Kirksville, Missouri, population around 15 to 17,000 people, and landed in Berlin, Germany, with population about 4 million people. So
Wow.
It was a shock.
To say the least.
I didn't speak the language. I didn't know anybody, and for the first time in my life, really, I was independent. So it was great, and it was overwhelming, sometimes deliciously so. The smell of currywurst still reminds me of food carts in Berlin, because I can still smell it around DC occasionally. So yeah.
Right. You're in Manassas, Virginia, right?
Yes, I live in Manassas. I work in Chantilly, Virginia, at a place called Driver Rehabilitation Center of Excellence, which actually works with people with disabilities. So
nice. And one of the interesting things that I actually kind of like about your story, you always hear like an exchange story. I went to Europe, or I went to France or Germany, and it was wonderful and rah, rah, rah. But your story in Berlin actually has some challenging parts to it as well, like with your appendix, with your host family. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah. So challenges kind of came hand in hand with the independence. With transportation, for example, I was now free to pretty much explore wherever I wanted. I mean, my small towns didn't really have public transit, but that also meant that I had to deal with metro stations, and sometimes they didn't have elevators. So I remember I once tried to ride piggyback on a fellow exchange student up an escalator. It gave me a concussion and a really expensive emergency room bill. So I quickly learned which places were more easily accessible and sort of mapped my way around the city based on elevators after that. And my host family, I ended up with 2 host families. My first host family didn't really understand what it would be like to host a teenager with a disability. They had 2 preteen daughters that already needed a lot of care and attention, and I don't think they really kind of got that I would need a little extra help at times. And they told me all of this while I was in the hospital.
This was a different time in the hospital.
Yeah, this was a different time in the hospital. second time. So after the ER bill, after the concussion, I ended up in November of '96. I remember exactly when it was. My appendix burst right around the time that they said, "I'm sorry, bud, you can't really live with us anymore. We don't really know how to deal with the disability." Um, so about the time, like I said, about the time I was in the hospital, they told me this, and luckily I had a wonderful teacher at the high school that I was going to that let everyone know in the school that I was looking for a new family. And one of those people that really heeded the call was the person who would become my host brother, Marcus, who also has cerebral palsy, a little bit milder than myself. I'm a wheelchair user. He's able to walk with a cane, but he obviously understood what it was like to have a disability. And he also was an exchange student to America about 3 years before, so in '93. And so he asked his parents if I could come stay with them for at that point, it was about 6 to 7 months. And they said, not only did they say yes, but they gave up their bedroom and slept on an air mattress for 6 to 7 months in the living room while I took their bedroom. So they were really amazing. And so I really wouldn't have traded all the hardship to get to that point, because I wouldn't have met them and really gotten to know them and love them.
That's really awesome. And so it sounds like, what could have been kind of a pretty negative experience it turned into an awesome opportunity for disability and exchange, and just meeting a really awesome host family that you still keep in touch with today.
It really is. And I true to technology, I found them again on Facebook. So.
Nice. It seems like the listeners might think, when I say, oh, all these challenging things happen, no, that's really great. They might think, oh, really? Like, why would you want that to happen? I don't know. When I was in Chile, when I was in Latin America, I had a lot of challenges related to books, related to, getting around and working with people. And once was told I couldn't go into a venue to listen to a concert because I was blind. But those experiences really, maybe it's like your experiences. Sometimes those experiences are what really give us the chance to grow and problem solve.
My response to you're blind, well, yes, but your ears still work. So so that seems to make sense to me. But yeah, the challenge is really, I think for me especially, like I said earlier, it was the first time I'd really been independent, and it gave me a chance to really flex my creative problem solving muscles, where I hadn't really done that as much before in the US. And so for me, it was really positive and shaped who I ended up becoming as an adult. So yeah, totally. I wouldn't change it for the world.
And you, and also it sounds like you had a lot of amazing experiences too with German. Like you said, you came and you couldn't speak German. What was that like, kind of getting to a country where you couldn't communicate with people what you wanted to say and having to figure out this new language really quickly?
It came with some challenges. At first, when I got there, the exchange program had basically a class for beginners who didn't speak any German. And we were all grouped together, all these exchange students. And within the first week, I basically locked my keys to the apartment in my host parents' apartment. And I missed the group bus to that class. I only knew a few words at that point in German, and I kept saying that I didn't have my bowl instead of my key, because there's only one letter difference between bowl and key, and it sounds basically like the same word. So it was really challenging. I also tried to make small talk about the weather with some German guys while I was waiting at a crosswalk one day. I was really proud of myself. I just learned these new words. And instead of talking about the weather, I ended up hitting on them. So
you told them that you were hot instead of the weather was hot.
Pretty much. I'm not sure they agreed with me, but I did learn very quickly about German grammar after that. So again, it was a learning experience.
I can imagine. And so then, so you ended up taking that along with you after you got back from Germany to continuing in high school in Mississippi and then going on to college What was kind of your professional slash academic trajectory after that? I mean, in terms of like this interesting career you've had in getting to communicate with interesting people by almost literally learning their languages.
Sure. So it actually started, I started at the University of Central Florida in Orlando in 98. I ended up majoring in public relations and minoring in German. Big shock, right? I I wanted to minor in German because it allowed me to kind of stay close to my experience. It kind of kept my host family close to my heart, and so I really wanted to take that with me as far as I could take it. And so I'll get to some of those things later, but I so I ended up majoring in public relations because I wanted to change the world. I'm kind of an idealist. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, helping people. Um, Soon after graduation in 2001, I ended up working for a Florida nonprofit that directed people to community resources. And during my first month on the job, I used both Spanish and German to communicate with people. And as you had mentioned, it sort of started the pattern of communicating to help others and helping others to communicate. So in 2004, I kind of switched and decided to help others communicate and did a master's in speech pathology, again at UCF, University of Central Florida. I Part of it was because I knew what the frustration felt like when you knew what you wanted to say but you couldn't, because that was basically me during my first 3 months in Berlin. Because I knew in English what I wanted to say but could not do it in German. So it was very frustrating. And so I wanted to help kids kind of express themselves. I was focused more on school-based speech pathology. And during that time, I met Daniel, my future husband. I met him online.
Nice.
Yeah, we were both living in Orlando, but not going to the same schools. Um, and we kind of were friends for a year. We dated for a year and change. And then in 2007, he asked me to follow him to a new job in Maryland that he had. And I took a risk and I did. I followed him to Maryland and stayed there for a year before we changed jobs again. And so it was a pattern. We ended up in Seattle in 2008, and I began another master's degree in early childhood education. And then in, let's see, I'm trying to think of all of the things that I've done. The reason I kind of wanted to do early childhood was I wanted to help kids express themselves, but in a different way. I was really fortunate to live and teach in larger urban areas. So Maryland, DC, Seattle, there were so many areas where there were so many cultures and languages. Um, and yeah, so it was
Like
really great.
like you were telling us too, like that, like made that must have made it interesting. Like didn't you say you remember you mentioned to me like you went and worked at like a preschool or a daycare or something, and
I
there were a
did.
lot of parents from different backgrounds there that you got to work
So
with.
yeah, in Seattle, I worked at a preschool for refugee families that had just arrived in the U.S. And I learned some of the families' languages in order to, one, to communicate with parents, and two, to kind of give children comfort because here they are, probably days in this new, strange place. And so the least I could do was give them a word or two that they recognized. I once learned bits and pieces of an endangered oral language that had no written components whatsoever. So that was definitely that was my biggest challenge as far as learning a language. But
Maybe like
I
lots of hand gestures and drawings and things
yeah,
with the
it was
parents.
Pictionary International. Um, and and I've done that in other jobs as well. I mean,
Oh,
in my current job, as a matter of fact, I've had people with different disabilities. Again, we're in the DC area, so people come from all over, and I have translated emails into rare languages just so that I could respond to their email. Like, so I translated it, and then I tried to formulate a response and translate it from English into their language to make sure that they got what they needed. Um, I have also arranged services for German people, which is much easier than some of the other languages.
Yeah, you've had some experience with German.
Some experience, yes. I actually also, going back to the things that I've done, I taught German at the high school level for a year as well. So, yeah, German's sort of my favorite. It's not the prettiest language, but it's one that's really near and dear to my heart. And my exchange year sort of lit that fire within me to just kind of communicate with as many people as I could and as many languages as possible.
How many languages have you learned so far?
Well, I'll be brutally honest and say 4.5.
It's more than me.
So not including English, because that's kind of a giveaway, right?
Yeah, that's a gimme. Yeah.
So German, I had to learn French while I was in Germany. They required it to go to the high school. In order to attend the high school in Berlin, you had to learn French. So German, French. I knew Spanish before I even went on my exchange. I learned Italian while I was in Germany as well, and then kept learning once I got back to the United States. And I say a half because I'm learning a little bit of Dutch because it looks and sounds a lot like German, so maybe that's cheating a little bit, but it's still another chance to communicate with people. I'm trying Mandarin right now, but it's so different from the European languages that one might take me a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll have to give more time for that one. I probably know. I guess by that way of counting, I probably have 1.5 languages. I have Spanish and Portuguese.
Give yourself credit for whatever you can do.
There you go. Got any other languages that you're looking to learn in addition to, I know once you've conquered Chinese, do you have any language goals that you're going for?
Well, general goals that have language components. I'd love to really tour parts of Europe for my 10th wedding anniversary in 2020. I got married in 2010. So my goal in 2020 is to visit Europe for a month and visit 4 to 5 countries. And for each country I visit, I want to at least have conversational fluency.
Nice.
In those. And so by the time I'm 50, I want to be fluent in at least 10 languages. And maybe by the time I'm 50, I'll have Mandarin under control.
Wow.
Lead time there.
Nice. Well, Stacy, we wish you luck with that. And thank you so much for this time that you've been able to spend with us to share your perspective and experience. I think it's just been really awesome to learn about your experience and how far you've come since then.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes and consider sharing us with your networks. Also, let us know what you think at Twitter @MobilityINTL or Facebook, Mobility International USA, using the hashtag LifeAfterExchange. And to learn more about hashtag LifeAfterExchange, go to miusa.org.